Well, hey, Eric. Nice to meet you online.
Nice to meet you too.
I
Good to
mean,
see
we've
you.
we've chatted before, but I don't know that we've actually seen each other face to face, so this is fun.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's one of the things that doing this over Zoom is great for is like you get to also see into people's like homes. I love the hats you've got going on in the background.
Well, it's funny. I hung all those hats before I ever realized that my bedroom would become like a place where I do most of my work.
Right.
Didn't see this coming.
Yeah. You don't think like, oh, my job's going to entail inviting people into the my personal space on
I
a regular
know,
basis,
right? I
right?
know. No, I did not. We didn't foresee a lot of this, did we?
No, no, not at all.
And here we are. Well, I'm so thrilled to meet you in person. I will fangirl just a bit. I'm a huge fan of your writing. And I know that we are also both just massive theater dorks.
Yes.
So that's super fun too. I always appreciate someone who's live tweeting the Sondheim reunion.
Well, that's the thing I love about like meeting people over the internet, like meeting you specifically over the internet, is that like you get to, if we met at a party, I don't know that we would come across this
Uh-huh.
intersection of our interests.
Right.
But on the internet, it's like, yes, we do care about these things, and that means
Yes.
that we have the highest level of taste.
Totally. So funny. Well, we both have books that birthed in the midst of a pandemic, which is
Hmm. Super great.
super awesome. And it's both of our first books, right? This is your
Yeah.
first book. This is my first book. And this has been a fun conversation series to talk with other authors and find where our books intersect. And what I love about chatting with you is that our books, even though mine is kind of a mommy memoir, and yours is different, we have a lot of intersections in our lives,
Yeah, absolutely.
outside of our love for theater.
Yeah.
And one of them is that we both kind of fell into writing online.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
mean, did you ever imagine that your career would be like writing on the internet?
No, it doesn't make any sense. Like that's crazy. Like
What was
that's
your what was your undergrad in?
English.
Okay.
So I wanted to write, but like when
Yeah.
I was, I was an undergrad in like 99 to like 2003.
Uh-huh.
And so like, the internet wasn't even really a thing that
Right.
we believed in. It was sort of
No.
like chat rooms.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm so old that I got my first email account after college.
okay. Yeah.
I didn't know the internet until after
Right.
college.
So and now to be two people who have this not only like a careers on the internet but like a
Yeah.
facility with internet language is like really wild to me
It's
because I
wild.
don't think of myself as somebody who's at the leading edge of the internet, but that's where my bills get paid
And
by.
here you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird. Okay, so I'm going to read a little section from my book that talks about the internet and my ambivalence about it. And this is from a chapter called "The Internet is Full of Shit, and So Am I." Okay. A couple of years ago, NPR reached out to me for a segment they were doing about the holidays. They wanted to include me for tips on how moms could stay organized and calm in the midst of the season. I said yes, being the NPR nerd that I am, and then promptly forgot to put the interview in my calendar. I had absolutely no business giving any shred of advice on successfully navigating the holiday season. I have a massive meltdown pretty much every year mid-December. I predictably overbook myself, take on too much, and fail to say no. This particular year was no exception, and my stress was affecting my health. I wasn't getting enough sleep, my immune system was shot, and I had developed shingles, a reactivation of the chickenpox virus that manifests in mind-numbingly painful blisters. Shingles is, according to the Google, thought to be brought on by stress. One morning, a few days after NPR booked me to do the segment, I stepped out of the shower and began applying calamine lotion to the rash across my chest and stomach when my cell phone rang from a New York number. I picked it up thinking it was my agent. An NPR host told me to hold. I'd be live in 2 minutes. The calamine lotion was still wet, so I couldn't get dressed. I turned, and on the other side of the sliding glass door that separates the bathroom from the outside, I saw the guy who mows my lawn step into the backyard. I couldn't close the curtains without exposing my body even further, so I scurried into the toilet alcove, which would at least partially hide me from view. There, naked, with sopping wet hair and covered in calamine lotion, while hiding from a man mowing my grass in the backyard, I gave a national interview on how other people could stay sane during the holidays. including tips on mindfulness, self-care, and slowing down. I hung up and thought, I am so full of shit.
Oh my goodness. I love that image. I mean, I feel very bad for you, but
Yes.
I totally understand. Just
Oh,
also the weirdness of being in your own home and also being broadcast on national public
it's
radio.
so weird. It's
Yeah.
so weird. Totally. And I just, if anyone could have taken a photo of me, it was not, yeah, it's not a good scene.
I love that. I love it. Well, it's so funny. I'm going to read a section from an essay called Unsubscribed from All That, which is about basically sort of going viral on the internet and then finding myself with a job because of it.
Yeah.
Um, so at this point, I've been writing my column on L.com for a couple of years. In late January, just before the inauguration, Congresswoman Maxine Waters of California gave a terse, fiery press conference in which she said that then FBI Director James Comey had no credibility. Watching the 20-second video, I felt the disparate streams of my writing voice come together, and I pounced on it with glee. She was black, she was confident, she was extra, and she wasn't mincing words. Honey, I lived. The internet responded, vociferously. The article was read hundreds of thousands of times, the most of anything I'd written up to that point. A month later, she appeared on All In with Chris Hayes on NBC and let that place out, reading a list of people in the Trump administration that she thought were colluding with Russia. I wrote, where does she find the energy, y'all? She's trying to single-handedly strap this country to her back and carry it to safety. And no, she doesn't care if the country wants to go or not. Rep. Waters is that auntie who attacks your face with a wet wipe at every cookout and has a ninja-like ability to whip a comb out and run it through your hair before you can protest. Close to 1 million people read that column. People started calling her Auntie Maxine. I struggled briefly with a question of authenticity in what I'd written. Was I treating her with respect? I thought so, but not everyone online agreed. Some took me to task for using black and gay vernacular for a quote-unquote white magazine. I felt that my context was the internet, not necessarily L.com's average reader, who may or may not be white. I didn't argue about it, though. I made sure to correct people when they said I was the first to call her Auntie Maxine. I'd said she was like an auntie, but I hadn't gone so far as to dub her Auntie Maxine. It may have risen from my column, but giving her a nickname would have been overreach. I felt like this was an important distinction. Ironically, she liked the moniker and started using it herself. That April, she invited me to an event she was hosting concerning Trump's tax returns. We know how to party. I thought I was just going to be hanging out, watching her rip the president to shreds. I arrived, and her chief of staff ushered me on stage for an intimate conversation between Representative Maxine Waters, activist Brittany Packnett, and R. Eric Thomas, deer in the headlights.
You know, isn't it so wild? I mean, we're talking about finding ourselves writing on the internet, the places that that has placed us as well. I mean, did you ever think when you started writing a humor column for Elle that you'd be sitting and having a, political conversation?
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like, a lot of the internet writing that got that brought Elle's attention to me brought me to Elle's attention rather, was just sort of like me just sitting out making jokes,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like, why would you, like, I'm just sort of like, I'm your garden variety idiot. Why would you want to put me on stage with a congressperson? So that's and one of the great things about the internet, however, though, is that it's democratic. And so
Yeah.
there is this sense that everybody has something useful to say,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the same way, it's like, NPR is reaching out to you to get your ideas on mindfulness, and you're thinking like, oh, well, what do I know about mindfulness? It's like, well, you're a person with a mind, and you're reaching for
Yeah.
a quality of peace, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious to ask you this. You're a humorist, and a lot of what people know you for is humor writing, observations on pop culture, things like that. But in your book, and also in many of your columns, you do dive into issues of race, issues of social justice, issues of politics, issues of faith. Do you think about how to strike that balance between these two voices? Is that something that you're strategic about, or is it just something that you kind of follow as it comes?
I think it's something that I actually sort of chase after. Like it
Yeah.
feels like the authentic. My goodness, what word am I trying to say? Who can say? Oh, a day. It feels like the most authentic representation of who I am.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's hard to do when writing specifically for the internet because the
Mm-hmm.
internet is so devoid of context and also so flush with context in like ways that are very, I think, often in conflict with each other,
Mm-hmm.
that things can be whipped up and turned into something that they're not.
Yeah.
Whereas with the book, I felt like this was an opportunity for me to run wild and be all of my different
Yeah.
selves, and to say like, yeah, I'm going to make a shameless pun, and then I'm going to talk about a faith journey, and
Yes.
then going to talk about issues around race.
Yeah.
Do you find that? I feel like you are very good at talking about sort of various political or social justice issues, but also you have a really great sense of humor. So like, how are you mixing those?
Well, I feel like it's funny because what I really want to talk about, like if someone just gave me a microphone, I want to talk about issues of race and social justice, and I feel like
Hmm.
those are the things that I have something to say on.
Hmm.
But it's weird because in a way I feel like the humor writing is what gets me in the door, maybe, if that makes
Mm.
sense. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
I mean, to be honest, I actually wanted my first book to be a book about white privilege. That was what I pitched, a
Okay.
book about white privilege. And my agent was like, yeah, people aren't going to buy, like, the people that buy a book on white privilege are people who are interested in learning about white privilege. And you need to get in the door, so to speak. Does that make sense? Like, it,
Yeah.
and so I feel like I've always kind of, I mean, I like humor writing, but I feel like
Hmm.
sometimes I'm using it. Like I wrote a book called Rage Against the Minivan, and I don't think people are going to pick it up and think like, oh, I bet there's a chapter on white privilege in here.
Okay. Yeah.
But I I popped it in there, you
Hmm.
know. So I feel like I do. I don't know. Like I'm always trying to think like how much. What's the ratio of humor to like social justice writing that I need to keep to keep people coming who maybe aren't looking for that. Does it make
Yeah.
sense?
No, it does. Yeah, it feels, on one hand, it feels sort of like a Trojan horse, which
Yeah,
is, I think, very useful and a very
kind
good
of does.
use of privilege. And also, it feels sort of like ministry, you know?
Yeah.
You're inviting
Yes.
people in, and then you're saying, well, okay, here's the word,
Yeah.
which
Thanks
is
for coming
fascinating.
for the Bachelor recap, and now
Right, right,
let's talk about some hard things.
right.
But
No,
I mean, and I feel that with your writing too. I mean, I think that's what I appreciate so much is I have friends who read your L column who would never um, actively pursue, some of the topics that you end up talking about, which is
mhm.
great. It does afford you a sort of weird like humor credibility,
Yeah.
and it brings people in, and then you get to talk about harder things, and I think you do that so well.
Yeah, and I mean, like the way I've always learned to speak about harder things, like, and I learned this from my family, was, through laughter,
Yeah.
and it wasn't like we're not a sitcom family where we're sort of like we all sit around the table and crack jokes about like privilege or whatever the after school special thing that happened this week
Yes.
is, but like. There's this great line, and I say this all the time. This is great line from Steel Magnolias that goes, "Laughter through tears is my favorite emotion,"
Yeah.
and that I identify with that.
Totally.
I if we're going to have to deal with the hard business of being a human being, I want to be able to find a way to laugh through it because otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
And yeah, I do feel like people um, come to my writing because it makes them laugh, makes them feel good, and I don't want to let them down when they open up the book. And that was my big
Yeah.
concern with the book was that
Yeah.
people were going to say like, "Oh my goodness, this is all so serious."
Yeah.
Um, but I think what I found is that people just were hungry for having a more human experience, and sometimes the
Hmm.
human experience is laughter through tears, and sometimes it's just sort of parsing something that's really tough for all of us to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I thought your book hit such a good balance. I loved reading it so much. Another thing that you and I have in common was that I was a pastor's wife for 20 years,
Hmm.
and you're married to a pastor. And you talk about that journey of um, Well, I mean, talk about that a little bit. What was it? Did you ever picture yourself being married to a pastor?
No, indeed. No, indeed. I mean, I grew up in an evangelical church,
Yeah.
and so like there were like in my church, like women weren't allowed to hold positions of
Hmm.
leadership in the ministry. So
Yeah.
like I couldn't, when I thought of myself as a straight person, I couldn't have been married to a pastor,
Right.
And there were other churches that I was aware of that had women pastors, but I just sort of never imagined it. I come from, my father is involved in the ministry of the church they go to now, which is much more progressive. And my grandfather, my father's father, was a pastor for most of his life. So I guess I come by it honest, but I never thought, oh, I'm going to be the pastor's spouse. And then when I did get, when I met David, my husband, and I started to figure out like, what does this mean? What do I do?
Hmm.
I like Googled, trying looking for books on like how to be a pastor's spouse, and all I found was things that were geared toward a certain type of white woman, who's
Yeah.
not me,
Yeah.
and
And a
like
certain kind of church, I'm sure.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, I don't know that this is applicable to my circumstance.
Right.
And, the big advice that I got was like, you should teach Sunday school and you should play the piano for the choir.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow.
I don't know that I can do either of those things.
That's
So,
really old school.
yeah, very, very old school. Did you get like, did you have like paradigms for how to be like in service to the church as the spouse of the pastor?
Oh, I mean, for sure. And it's exactly what you just said. I mean, I did. I literally taught Sunday school and played piano.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, yes. And I sang on the worship team, and I
Hmm.
served on the drama team, and I served on the missions team. And I mean, it was kind of a buy one, get one free. Like, my
Yes.
husband worked for the church, but I was practically working there, but not
Hmm.
being paid.
Mm.
But I grew up like you. I was also a pastor's kid. So
Okay.
we have that in common as well. And very similarly grew up in a church where a woman would not have been in leadership. So, it's like if you wanted to be in ministry, you married into it in a weird
Mm.
way. And I think I subconsciously did do that. And I got married very young. I got married when I
Hmm.
was in college still.
Right.
And I just thought, man, being a pastor's wife, that's just at the top of the food chain in terms of like being a good person,
Yeah.
right?
I love that.
Which was so, yeah, it's the way you think when you're 20 and you
Right,
have
right,
no life
yeah.
experience.
Right. Well, you latch onto the people and the careers that seem to like to
Yeah.
be have the most gravity.
Yeah. And then, as it turns out, I was a terrible pastor's wife because, I mean, I think I was good for about 15 years.
Hmm.
And then for the last 5 of it, I started really questioning everything. And I was
Mm.
questioning women's roles. And I was
Hmm.
questioning the marriage between evangelicalism and republicanism.
Hmm.
And I was really questioning LGBT theology,
Okay.
theology around. And I was becoming affirming, and I was
Hmm.
becoming a liberal, and
Hmm.
and I was loud about it. I mean, I talk
Mm.
about it in my book. Like I just am not a personality who I learned these things, and then I'm like, I'll hold that in my heart. Like I was like, you guys, what the fuck? Like, did we just fire that guy because he's gay? Like, is everyone listening? Like, I was so loud and
Hmm.
so I was, and self-righteous, and I wanted everyone to be where I was. And I think I was a pain in everyone's ass.
Hmm.
Wild. And then, oops.
Well, I mean, but that's good trouble though, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
those are I mean, I'm sure it was not fun for you.
No.
But it's so funny the number of people who I have come in contact with, like online and like even before the book, who come from backgrounds like that. Like
Mhm.
particularly like women who like sort of sat in a church pew and were like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm really inspired by hearing those stories because I don't know, I felt so isolated, and I felt isolated like within my small little church and also isolated within the world. And it's really amazing to find that these revelations are happening all over the world in all sorts of different kinds of churches and in all kinds of people.
I think they are. I mean, I think they are. I think, I think there's an interesting shift happening where people are really asking questions. And I love, like, your husband's church where it's just like, we're just fully affirming and we're
Hmm.
fully welcoming. And I, it's lovely. I remember discovering that I was a fan of your writing, and then discovering, and it's funny because another little concentric circle between us is that your husband, his church is involved in, like, he went to Wild Goose,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I
yeah.
go
Oh.
every year. So, we're kind of in the same, like, faith circles at this point. So
Hmm.
when I realized who your husband was, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. You're like my favorite internet couple.
Oh my, I love that. It's like it's amazing. Like his world has like the people who are coming to discovering me through him. It's
Yeah,
like so wild to me.
isn't it?
Um, and because like I'm like, oh, this is the person that I'm trying to reach, and I didn't even know this person was out there. Like he talks about
Yeah.
Wild Goose so much, and he went last year, and like he told me, but he was like, it's so hot, you get so sweaty, it's great, and I'm like, this doesn't sound like something I need to do in my life, but it
Well,
does sound great.
listen, I have very mixed feelings about it as a high maintenance person who does not camp, because it's like I love the ethos, and it's lovely. I lead beer and hymns there, and it's just this
Mhm.
crowded tent of 300 people singing old hymns and drinking, and it's wild, and it's irreverent but reverent, and it's so
Mhm.
fun. And then there's a disco every night where we're all just sweaty and disgusting, and um, but I also really also hate being hot, and
Mhm.
so it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, I know. Every time I hear about it, like he loves it so much, he has one of the magnets on the back of his car
Yeah.
for it, and I'm like, and every time he mentions it, like every year, he's like, "Going to Wild Goose, there's a hotel nearby if you want." And I'm like, "I see
Yes.
what you're doing. I'll think
Yes.
about it.
Listen,
I can't be hot."
listen, you just need to stay in the hotel. You have to book it
Hmm.
super early, stay in the hotel with air conditioning, and you can walk in and out. You can,
Yeah.
you know, and then you can do what I do, which is that you buy like your costumes, which
Hmm.
is that I wear my flowy skirts and like
Hmm.
combat boots that I don't wear ever during the rest of the year, but I'm boho now.
I love it. It's like progressive Christian Burning Man. That sounds
It
perfect.
is. It literally is. I've described it that way. But one thing, I mean, I think the reason people who've gone love it so much is that it's so different from many of our faith experiences. And, having grown up in a church where we weren't allowed to drink, and, we were not affirming, and just to be in a space where you've got, just such diversity of people, and, everyone's waving their rainbow flags, and
Mm.
and for it to be a specifically Christian space,
Hmm.
I just every year leave being like, okay, these are my people. Like, the world is
Mm.
crazy and Christianity seems like a shit show, but these are my people.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, which is what a miracle. What a miracle
Yeah,
to discover that on
it
Earth.
does. So I guess I put up with the sweatiness, but I have a lot of resentment about it. I do.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
Oh my gosh. All right. So we need to talk Broadway just a tiny bit.
Yes. Oh, I mean, don't get me started. Okay,
I'm going to get
where
you
do we even get
started.
it?
Okay. So I have some questions. I have some questions for you.
Okay.
So, you're a playwright as well,
Hmm.
which I
Yeah.
love. I'll tell you what, that's my secret, not shared goal, is I'd love to write a play someday.
Oh my gosh, do it. What
I
is
have some
I
ideas.
know you've got so much free time on your hands.
I'm just going to whip that out, like,
Right, right.
whip that out in the middle of homeschooling my children now.
Right.
It'll be easy. But yeah, so did you start as a playwright? Like, you were doing that before you got into internet writing.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and like, I mean, I feel like I mean, I've been trying to write plays for years and years and years, and I still describe myself first as a playwright, even though
Yeah.
it is, it is a place where I have found some success, but it is like of all the things that I do, the least successful. But I love it. So I'm just like, I'm a playwright, and they're like, don't you have a book out? And I'm like, oh yeah,
Totally.
that too.
Yes, I have a book with Random House. But anyway, back to my plays.
Right.
But I mean, that's, playwriting is, it's hard to find the same level of success in playwriting that you could with a book, just
Right.
because theater is not as, people aren't watching plays as much as they are reading books, sadly.
You're right, right, yeah. And so I try and sneak it in, like I
Yeah.
write about, my newsletter. I write about my plays and my love of theater, and I'm just like, look, we're going to collect all of the people, all of us who love
Yeah.
theater and love Broadway, and we're going to become bigger and bigger until they can't ignore us anymore.
I hope that. I do hope that. I mean, I always feel like, man, if we can just get more people loving theater, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, I agree.
So when did you kind of get bit with the theater bug? Was this at a young age? Was it?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I theater was one of my first loves, and like
Yeah.
like many people of our generation, like I saw the Into the Woods on PBS with Bernadette Peters, and I was like, oh,
Yes.
my mind is blown.
Yeah.
And all we were allowed to do was watch PBS as kids. We couldn't watch anything else. So I thought there were no other channels, and I thought the TV was just recorded Broadway shows, and I was like, this is great. I'm sold on television.
I
Um,
admire your parents for that.
It's very impressive. I'm trying to pull, if we have kids, I'm going to pull the same
Do
wool
it.
over their eyes. Like,
Do it.
nope, it's just the YouTube of my
Hmm.
favorite Broadway. That's all that TV
That's
is.
all there is.
But I always loved. I used to put on little cabarets for my parents. I'd force my brother to be in them with me. I just love theater. I love theatrical vocabulary. I love
Yeah.
spectacle. I love
Yeah.
drama. I'm very dramatic, and so like I thought I was going to be an actor for a while.
Yeah.
I'm a child actor, and I like tried to convince my parents to let me audition for the role of Gavroche in Les Mis when they were like there was a touring production. And they were
Uh-huh.
looking for like a little kid Gavroche. I am not a singer, and I'm also like I'm not a very good actor. And at the time, I was very shy as well. And so like I was like, what is the plan here? And I was like, I don't know. I just know I need to be on stage. So I don't know how long. So when did you like get into the theater as a kid, or was it later on in?
Yeah, as a kid, I mean, same. I just loved watching musicals as a kid. Oklahoma was my favorite movie as a child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny, I really have a distinct memory of my parents didn't take me to a lot of live theater. And I think I was 16. I had just got in my car, and Les Mis was playing in like, I grew up in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
in a small town, and Les Mis was playing in Orlando. And
Mm-hmm.
so I drove to Orlando without a ticket and thought, I'm going to try to, because I was so broke, going to
Mm-hmm.
try to buy a ticket from someone. And I did. I bought a ticket from a dad who was there with his 3 kids, and his wife was sick. And so I ended up seeing my first show next to this father of 3 kids who knew every word.
Oh my
And
goodness.
Les Mis, I still have a special place in my heart for Les Mis, but just I think from Heart Full of Love on, I bawled the entire second act.
Yeah.
Like I just bawled, like racking, heaving sobs to the point where I was like worried about the boys next to me. And that was it. I mean, I love, what I love about theater, and what is breaking my heart about, the fact that we're needing to social distance and theater's kind of on hold for now, is I just love that collective. I love sitting in a room and it's all happening. It's just
Yeah.
so different than a movie where it's happening live on stage, and that energy is being shared with the audience, and we're all sharing it, and it just feels, I don't know, like humanity.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's something so exhilarating about experiencing emotions in tandem with other people,
Yeah.
And I write in my book about how I think of theater as church, and I think
Yes.
I'm like, there's so many different things that are church that are not in a church building, and
Yeah.
theater is absolutely one of those.
Yeah.
And it's the closest I get, besides concerts, to sort of a euphoric experience.
Yeah.
Whether it's laughing with other people, or crying with other people,
Yeah.
or like the last. I think the last thing I saw in theaters was Jagged Little Pill on Broadway. That makes sense. I might have seen something locally after that. I can't remember. But the Jagged Little Pill is so great. And I love a mid-show standing ovation, which is like, I'm also sort of very much like, we don't need to stand all the time.
Yes.
But after Lauren
But when
Patton
it's deserved. Yeah.
right. And she's like, it's so well structured. Like they sing You Ought to Know, and it blew my mind. And then I remember midway through the song, I was like, well, the minute this is over, I'm jumping to my feet.
Yeah.
And like that just like you don't get to walk into a coffee shop and say like, I'm going to give a standing ovation to this
Yeah.
blueberry muffin,
Yes.
So like, why not feel something so strongly?
I love it. I love it so much. Yeah. And I know I'm not just a musical theater fan. I mean, I know we both also just like straight plays. And so I'm going to ask you a couple favorites.
Yeah.
And I've asked you this before, so I know the answer, but what's your favorite straight play? What's your favorite non-musical?
Hopefully I say the same answer I said last time. I love Angels in America. Is
You
that what I
did
said
say
last
that.
time? Okay, yeah, I
Yes.
could talk about Angels in America all day long. I love it.
Sadly, I've seen the movie, but I never got to see that live, and I feel like the movie is not giving me the same experience.
No, yeah, I mean, because one of the great things about Angels specifically is that Kushner uses um, uh, live theatrical spectacle in such an effective way.
Yeah.
That like when you see it on screen, you're like, yeah, yeah, those are things that happen on screen.
Yeah.
Angels pop up, and
Yes.
people play different characters, but on stage, you're like, how is this happening? This is
Yeah.
wild. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
great.
And it was a long play, wasn't it?
Oh my
Wasn't it
gosh, yeah.
like
Like it was
three
years of my
hours?
life. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the last time I saw it was on Broadway, and I saw it all in one day. You see it like Harry Potter,
Right.
and it's so like the first part is I want to say like 3.5, 4 hours,
Yeah.
and there's like 6 intermissions in it. So you're just
Yes.
sort of like it's like when you pass the piece in church, you just get up, you like at an intermission, just like greeting all the gays you've seen around. And then the second you go have a quick dinner and you come back and you're out at 11 o'clock. So it's like 1 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
This durational experience. It's so great.
But you know that everyone in that room is like, they're in it. Like, you're not
Yeah.
going to go see Angels in America if you're not like a hardcore.
Yeah.
You're not going to
Yeah.
spend your whole day.
Right. You're like, is this 90 minutes no intermission? I gotta go. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay. What is your favorite musical that maybe is not an expected favorite musical?
Hmm. Um. Well,
Any
I
little
said this.
hidden gems you love?
Yeah, I've said this before. I don't know. I think this might not be expected. I love Little Shop of Horrors so much.
I
Um,
love Little Shop of Horrors.
yes,
In
thank
fact,
you,
I
kindred spirits.
just saw it on Broadway with who did I see it with? Oh my gosh, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What's his name? Christian Borle playing the
Oh, yeah,
dentist.
yeah.
That was
Oh,
fun.
that recording is. I was just listening to that recording because, well, one, it's so great, and two, the woman who played Audrey, Tammy Blanchard,
Yeah.
has such a unique approach to the role. It's so
She
funny.
does. It was different. And it took me a second, like
Hmm.
it took me about a half hour before, because I was like, I don't know. Because,
Right.
this is such an iconic role played by the
Yeah.
original. And I was like, I don't know. And then, like, midway through, I'm like, okay. Like, she really brought some raw kind of, like, I think a little bit more humanity to the role. It was less comedic and it was really tragic.
Yeah, yeah, I know, and like that surprised me too because yeah, Ellen Green has sort of owned this role. I
Yeah,
mean,
forever.
she did it like 3 years ago with Jake Gyllenhaal in
That was
concert,
so crazy that they had her doing it. Like, she's got to be, she's older than me. She's got to be
right?
like 50.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really really wild, but like I love Little Shop of Horrors. I was just the other night. I was thinking about it, and I was trying to put it into the manuscript for a book I'm working on, and it's not working out. So, but I was watching videos of productions online, and I came across this Japanese touring production of it, or it was a touring production in Japan with American actors, and from 1987. And the video quality is terrible, but it's the best thing I've ever seen. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Why are you watching this? I'm like, I just love Little Shop so much.
I love it so much. And in fact, my nephew is now like a Broadway actor.
Oh, nice.
And when he was young, I think he was about 5 years old, and we took a road trip. They used to come visit me. We took a road trip, and I played the soundtrack, and in between each song, I would explain what happens. And he still says to this day that that is what led him to major in theater and become an actor. Like,
Oh my
it's
goodness.
such a special show. I mean, what's not to love? The doo-wop girls are just the best.
It's the best invention.
The music is so good.
It's so good. And like Golden Age, like Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, like just a dream team of
So good.
and like in their prime. I also I love that you created a little mini Broadway actor right there in the car. with
I
your
did.
nephew.
Yes.
I'm trying.
He
Like,
now lives in New York City. He's like,
right. That's the dream. I'm trying to do that with my niece and nephew. I'm just like,
do it.
hey,
You can do it. You can do it.
here's ragtime. Listen to Audra High Note at the very end, the opening
I
number. It's
know.
amazing.
Although, listen, I've tried with my own children, and I'm 2 for 2. I have two total Broadway nuts. Like, we just watched Ben Platt's special, and they were singing every word. And then my boys, I am sad to report, one of them took a nap in Hamilton.
No. Oh, at Hamilton?
They took a $600 nap
Oh no!
in Hamilton.
Oh no!
The show's over, and he's like this. He's like, "Oh man, I was like sleeping through that."
How?
I was like, I know.
Thanks.
I know.
Oh,
It's so
my
sad,
goodness.
and they've been exposed. They've gone to every show. They don't deserve. They're ungrateful.
Well, I guess it's just not for everybody, I guess. I don't
I know.
understand it, but I guess
I still
it's
feel
true.
like they'll come around. I think they're just being teenagers. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I think maybe someday they'll appreciate it. Okay, what about, what's your favorite power ballad?
Oh, it's all coming back to me now by Celine Dion. I could listen to that. Like, I mean, that's not a Broadway ballad. If you want a Broadway ballad, I can probably think of one. But it's all coming back to me now. Like the gauzy white curtains in the music video, the way she goes, baby, baby.
Oh, yeah.
baby."
It's very,
So
I mean,
good.
that's theater. That is theater.
Yes!
That video.
Yes! Celine Dion invented camp. She's like, oh,
She
bonjour.
did.
I'm the best singer in the world, and also I will give you kookiness. It's so great.
She's so kooky, and her voice is so wild. Like, I don't understand that head mix, and like, it's like, is she belting? What she's doing is not like something mere mortals can do. Like,
No.
you can't teach that. I don't even know. It's like she and Barbara Cook are just off in some stratosphere on their own with their singing.
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly it. They're just like, they're aliens from a different planet
Yeah.
who came down to like bless us.
Their voices do a thing mine does not do.
Yeah.
What about, what would be, if you were an actor, what would be your dream role?
Okay, so
Anything. I mean, unrealistic.
yeah. Oh man, that's really hard. I love Velma Kelly.
Hell yes.
What a great role.
Heck yes.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Velma Kelly would be a fun one. I think closer to type. I don't know. I really love. I really love The Wiz. And I think that playing any of the male roles in The Wiz would be really, really great. I'd like to do that.
Yes. It's funny because my dream role was always Lori from Oklahoma, but I think I have accepted that I am now in Aunt Eller territory.
No.
I am. I'm closer. Yeah.
Yeah, like
Just-
moving
just
out of the
shifting
alternate
goals.
phase. Right, exactly. It's like, look, every part's a good part.
Listen, she has a good song. So,
Exactly. That's all that matters.
okay, last theater question. What is the musical soundtrack that you have listened to the most? What's your just go-to, every word, you listen to in the car, your happy place?
Well, beyond Little Shop, which I can perform verbatim for you right now.
I could too, and I'm actually feeling like maybe we should have just done that. Like, we could have just done a two-person show.
Give the people what they want.
I know.
Next time.
Next time.
I think the other one I know front to back is Anything Goes. Actually, I know really
Really?
well. Yeah, and I'm always, I love listening to Anything Goes. It's such a great. It's just bubbly and delightful.
It's
I also
cheerful.
was in it in high school, and so like the ones you're in, I feel like they get
That'll
into your
do it.
mind.
That'll
Yeah.
do it. I know. I've been in Sound of Music 3 times.
Oh, nice. Oh, wow. Who did you play?
A nun every time. A nun. How do you solve a problem like Maria? Again, like, when you're just in between the ages, like I'm too old for Maria, but not quite Mother Abbess yet.
Right. You're just like, I'm just here,
Just-
supporting.
Just gonna be a nun
Oh my goodness.
again. Oh, so fun. Well, it was such a delight to talk to you. I'm such a fan of your book. It is. It has heart. It has humor. It has poignancy. It was such a fun read. Such a good summer read. So I hope people will check out your book.
Yay, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And tell us where people can find you online.
So I am on Twitter. My handle is Our Eric, Oureric. It's also the same handle on Instagram if you want to look at random photos of my living room. And that's a weird thing to say, but feel free. And also, you can find me on Facebook. Just search for R. Eric Thomas, and you'll find both of my pages.